So here we can see our manager's dashboard with all of our different solutions at the top of the screen as well. So whether it's an engagement feed, whether we're shouting out applauses from our Access applause piece, or whether we're looking into the Access screening product when thinking about recruitment. We have a manager's dashboard here with all the key information related to that manager and their team. We can see these different widgets on the screen. We've got approvals, we've got my team area, then we've got aspects such as time and the exceptions or timesheets that need to be approved, and we're going to go through some of the different key aspects in here. So that security permission allows Mike here to log in as a manager, but he doesn't need to log in and log out. Depending on his activities, he can simply jump across to his employee dashboard there, all using one single username and password. Now, the system has been set up to devolve those responsibilities from HR onto the manager. And what I mean by that is here. If we take an example of David Adams, my employee in Mike's team, we can look at his HR dashboard, and in here, all to do with the security profiling of that individual manager. He can have access to things like contract information, current salary information as well, reducing administrative burden on internal HR teams. So we can see that full visibility of previous contracts, previous current salaries that have been changed. We've got that full audit trail in here as well. Visibility is key for that manager. To see things like work schedule, any onboarding, that outstanding onboarding items, etc. Again, reducing that burden for administrative teams. We're allowing managers to manage their teams efficiently in here. Now moving over to the approvals area, we can see we've got 3 outstanding approvals in this approvals widget, and that annual leave request that we submitted as an employee a few seconds ago. We can start to build absence rules or background rules in the back of here. So if there's certain members of staff that can only be off at the same time, we can build those rules in the background here to warn and flag managers. If this clashes with any other already booked off leave within his team, we can then confirm that we're happy to submit or reject with comment this approval, and that will go through and be X-approved for that individual to take that annual leave, which will display as a mobile notification if required on that employee's phone. Moving back to the manager's dashboard, other aspects a manager can complete in here. If we go into the team area, we can look at that employee calendar and we can add absences against that employee's calendar. So here you'll see David Adams's calendar. We can submit by selecting the dates. We can add an absence. And what this will do is it'll bring me through a couple of steps to complete associated with that absence, where we've got things like leave, type start, and end date. We can see underneath there, we can toggle it for an open-ended absence, whereby notifications can notify that manager after a certain time period to action and add an end date to that absence. If it's open-ended, we're then into the next few detailed screens. So the reasons for that absence, any narrative that needs to be associated with that absence. And when we come on to report in a bit later on, you'll see the deep capability in there. So the more reasons and narrative we can put in here, we can then start to see those key trends, those key metrics within the organisation, and maybe look at things like heavy lifting policies or manual handling policies, etc., if there's a number of colleagues off with backache over a certain time period. So it really intertwines with the data and the capability of rolling out those different courses all in one solution. We then go back to the manager's dashboard in here, and we can see other aspects such as this delegation widget here. And what this means is, again, thinking about devolving those responsibilities to managers, to team leaders, etc. We can delegate Mike's access here. If Mike was to take some annual leave for a week or two, he can delegate those different responsibilities. So we can see Kate here might want Kate to take the approvals of Mike's team for that week or two that Mike is off, and Louise might be the one responsible for adding those absences on Mike's behalf when he's off on annual leave. And that means the continuous data is continuing to flow through the modules, and ending up in payroll for those pay-affecting changes that need to be notified by the payroll users. Once Mark returns from the annual leave, the system reverts back to its original state. And again, really nice way of that continuous data continuously coming through the solution. Here, we're going to look at a super user persona. So I'm logging in as Jane, and again, to reiterate, the solution being security profile driven. The solution will recognize Jane as a super user and have associated access with things like the recruitment module, the payroll dashboard, the reporting module as well. Again, using that single username and password, there's no need to log in or log out depending on what Jane wants to achieve. Here we use the drop-down of the different icons available. We can see there the different modules and, of course, that manager dashboard and an employee dashboard for Jane to book her own annual leave and check her own payslips. So we're now in the HR module, the people management area, and this is a snapshot, this command center here. So a snapshot of all the people, data within the organization, things like employees, details that we'll look at in a second, but also things like new starters coming into the system, any leavers, any outstanding probations, onboarding, offboarding items to complete. And here we see the successful applicants area. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago with the full recruitment module in the unified solution, once that candidate data is brought in, and that candidate is a successful individual, they'll move into the people management area to be applied to the correct pay group as a new starter. All of that detail has been captured through the recruitment process. There's no need for dual entry or data points in here. If we go into an employee view as a super user, I can type in my employee, James, and you'll remember as an individual manager, we can only see contract information and current history or salary information. Whereas now, as a super user, we can see all of that related information of that individual. So home address key information, alongside things such as absences, current work schedule, any onboarding items to complete. But also, if we look a bit further down here, we have that DocuSign functionality available to us, not just in where we are now, the people management area, but also for the recruitment module as well. So whether you are offering a contract to employment to a successful candidate that has the ability to integrate through DocuSign, but if we're amending, updating, changing hours of current employees, that can also be utilised for that area too. Now, once signed, all of that information will hold against the employee record here. Again, the super user has the ability to view all of that associated data with that employee and to go in and check those details if required. Moving back through to the people management areas. We talked about the new starters and any leavers and changes, any salary approvals that we may need to be aware of as an administrator. Now we move through to the payroll module now, as it's that unified solution. We started off with submitting annual leave requests, and then as a manager, adding an absence to an employee's calendar. This is where all of that detail will flow into the payroll module. So it's that continuous data flow to the payroll module to make sure that employees are paid accurately and on time. Every time here we can see the payroll dashboard. As an administrator, I have had access to this as Jane is a payroll administrator, as well as a HR administrator. We can see the different pay groups at the top of the screen there. Things like UK monthly, UK weekly, etc. We can see the current periods, any key observations, and the stage, the last step and time and data was run. If you've got more than one payroll user in here, Jane was to go off sick. That other payroll user could see that time and date on the completion in here. Now you'll see the split screen below. We have the inputs, we have things like joiners, rejoiners, any unprocessed employees, and any pay changes as well. And one thing that's worth noting along the top here is we have a cutoff date. Now this is payrolls flagging the sand to say This is when we need all of our time data in by now. This doesn't prevent information coming into the payroll module itself. It will end up in the stage changes element here. So if there's something that needs to be brought into that current period, the payroll user has full flexibility and visibility and complete discretion on bringing that change in the current period or letting it follow into the following period if it's not an immediate change that needs to be required. We also have the payroll check-in piece as well. So if we go into the payroll check-in piece, we can view things like gross to net. And those key observations and key messages are alerts to that payroll user for anything that needs to be double-checked. So you've got complete visibility and overall control in the payroll module of all that data and the changes that have happened. We also have standard reports, but national and living wage reports are part of the standard of the payroll module. And then we move on to our output. So things like our bank file, RTI, etc. in here, all done throughout that implementation process. So you've got full visibility and communication for those payroll users and the data within the payroll module. Now, there's a few settings in here as well, where you can set up parameters, you can set up your pension schemes, etc., and it's that unified solution. That unified payroll module is HMRC and revenue compliant in Ireland as well. Let's open the native PeopleXD app. This is available on the Google Play Store for Android users and on the App Store here with 4.8 stars of an overall 5,000 reviews. It has very much been designed and developed around everyday use, very similar to social apps that people can use in our everyday lives. We can use our fingerprint recognition to log in, and that will give me the tiles that the employee is able to see. From here, I can see in my next shift that I'm due to work the next time I'm on annual leave, and it's also going to prompt me to do things like update my social profile. Due to the flexibility and the nature of this system, you could update your profile to include details such as your personal address details, your mobile phone numbers, etc. We very much put the onus on the employee here to update their own personal details, therefore reducing the burden on the busy internal teams. Also, if we start to scroll through here, you can see that I'm being encouraged to do a plethora of other things. You can see from here that as an employee, I can see my line manager's biography. I can see how I can contact a particular person if I need to call them or email them at any time. If I return to the main screen here, we're going to complete a few activities from the employee self-service perspective. The first thing I'm going to do is book some time off. Now here we can see different tiles. So I've got an annual leave accrual that's displayed in hours, but I've also got annual leave displayed in days here. I can carry over annual leave if I've not used it all from the previous year as well. Here I can add in the specific days when I'm looking to take over my annual leave, and I can send that through an automated workflow for my line manager to approve. We will see that automation come through during the demonstration. Now, additionally, I could look at my calendar, which will show me my shifts, and also the shifts of my colleagues as well. If I want to check if anyone else is on holiday before I send through my annual leave request. Other functionality that is available and can be enabled if required includes clocking in and clocking out. This can complete a timesheet for the line manager to approve. Again, there are vast capabilities around our workforce management perspective with regards to just creating timesheets or full roster capabilities. Additionally, there is an expenses management solution in here that offers optical recognition characteristics as well. So, employees have a series of different options that they can utilize in order to make their lives simple and do things on the go. A key area for employees to access is to see their pay slips. Here in the app, we are providing employees with access to their data and their own information. The pay slips area is reducing administrative burden, so the employees don't have to contact the payroll team. If they're in a bank meeting or a mortgage meeting, they can access their own data. The app can be accessed by employees throughout their entire employee lifecycle. So it could be they access it during their onboarding stage before they start with you. Here we have a series of onboarding checklist items that are related to this individual's role. So not only do they have a positive onboarding experience, but they're remaining compliant by looking at details such as data presented, policy details, or updating things like their bank account details, enabling them to be compliant from day one as they get involved in their new role as soon as possible. You can also have access to a screen where we have a resources area. And here we can provide the information to employees based on their job, role, location, etc. But we can use this to promote messages, information about the organization or the mobile application. Here we can embed links to areas such as mental health. This is where we can hold frequently asked questions. So when new starters come into the organization, it's again a positive reinforcement and engagement that, from that employee experience, moves them forwards quickly. Hello and welcome to this short video on Access PeopleXD expenses. What we can see from the mobile application is an employee can get a full historical view of their expenses. And to add a new expense item, you select from the expense types definable by a customer. Once you've added a description and the date, the system will prompt you to upload a receipt, whether you take that from your gallery or upload a new photo from your phone. Now what we can see there is that the value of the receipt has pulled through to the claim £35.99. Now, with any expense type, the customer is able to set limits. So if I try to submit this through and update the receipt up to £58, we can see that the maximum value for food and beverages is £50. What we can also see here is that the employee is able to submit car travel mileage using 2 postcodes. The system will work out the distance and then also know how much their entitlement is per mile based on the cards that they have saved against their profile. Now, once the employee is happy with their expense claim, they click Submit. It'll go for a definable workflow, and as a manager, they would get visibility of all of their outstanding requests here. Once you click on to view the latest expense claim, the manager can also be made aware of the latest policies from the business. They're also able to click into each individual expense item and make sure all of the details are correct. This is also where they'll get visibility of the receipt that the employee would have uploaded from the native application. If we come back to this approval, we can confirm that the VAT amounts are correct, and we can either approve or reject. If we don't feel comfortable about approving a particular expense claim, and we want to forward it on, we can add a narrative and then also select from a list of nominated approvers here. Once the expense has been approved, it can be posted through to Payroll, and then the customer's got the option whether they pay the expenses at the same time as they process payroll, or alternatively, expenses can be processed separate to the pay run. Thank you for listening.